Hello my friends, welcome to this video. I'm so glad to be here. I am Amir Karami. I've been working in the field of BIM for many years. I have participated in many projects as a BIM manager and BIM coordinator. And there are many people who are BIM modeler and want to improve their job positions to BIM coordinator. Well, in order to work as a BIM coordinator, you must know a series of things. That in this video, we want to talk about the role of coordinator in BIM projects. Alright, let's get to it. At first, I'm supposed to talk about BIM roles and responsibilities. Well, in many different countries, they consider different roles. For example, if you search it on the internet, you can see we have BIM specialist, BIM engineer, BIM architect. But those three roles are very general and comprehensive in all countries, and they consider some specific roles for these three, which are BIM manager, BIM coordinator, and BIM modeler. And then we will go and talk about them in the next slides, so that we can understand it better and know what if we want to be a modeler or coordinator and etc. Well, as you can see, we divided BIM's work area into three parts. Well, these slides that you're supposed to see have many valid references. One of the best references is BIM Corner website. Well, if you like, then you can search its website and read the contents. The contents that I am telling you today is distribution and interpretation, one of the best contents of this website. Hence, our reference is this website. And I will add some of my content and experiences to this topic as well. Alright, as you can see in strategic, as you can see, the most involved thing in this section is BIM manager. The overall management of the project, BIM manager provides it, although with the help of BIM coordinator. Alright, there is a reason why some of the contents are contradictory, huh? Well, there's a reason that you see some of the contents are contradictory. Well, the reason is that there is not a very fine line between roles and responsibilities of BIM manager and BIM coordinator. Well, it can be said that the BIM coordinator is responsible for some tasks, but in fact it is the BIM manager's assistant. Okay, as you can see in strategic, we have corporate objectives, research, process, standards, and implementation and training. And then we have execution plan, aka BEP, as I told you before, which BIM manager is responsible for it. Okay, and we have model audit, that BIM coordinator is responsible for it. But before we get to management section, the next one, I should say, for getting conclusion, I say BIM manager is not for modeling and for any plan. But as you can see, BIM coordinator is not present in many strategic sectors, except by the order of the manager, who happens to be present in most of the project. Well, let's talk about its role in strategic, but if you see further, it also enters modeling, for example, training, even execution plan or model audit. By the way, there is also an important part that modelers check for problems when they reach this part and try to solve it. We will talk about coordinator later as well. And also content creation, modeling, and even model coordination, and creating complicated families are the jobs that coordinator is responsible for them. Well, the only the only section that coordinator is not involved in is drawing production. And the last role is a modeler, which is doing modeling and drawing production. All right, that's it for these three roles. Yes, an overview. Okay, let's get to the next slide. Okay, so let's get to BIM coordinator. The main task of a BIM coordinator is to ensure that the project team and management are using the latest tools correctly. They also need to plan regular training sessions in this regard. It is not necessary for the BIM coordinator to be the trainer themselves, though it is preferable. Well, as a BIM coordinator that I've been working on many projects for a while, I should say I do not agree with this part. Well, in my opinion, it is necessary for BIM coordinator to be highly proficient and able to answer all the questions that the modelers have and control them as well. Instead, they need to identify the BIM team's requirements and organize the training processes and workshops aiming to acquire appropriate knowledge and provide technical support to the team. Now we are supposed to talk about four main roles and responsibilities of a BIM coordinator. As you can see, they are educator, planner, and innovator, and coordinator. Okay, let's get to the first part, which is educator. All right, let me get to this part here. That's it. This diagram that you can see here in this picture shows the level of maturity or BIM levels. Yes, we can say that BIM technology is rapidly expanding. And about this diagram, I should say we have CAD in level 0. In level 1, we have the combination of 2D and 3D. The 2D maps or CAD base, which is working with BIM base. One of the most common software is BIM. In level 1, we have no collaboration and integration between teams. For example, the facilities team works separately and the architecture team works separately as well. And in a process, they link their models and integrate them with each other, which in my opinion, it's not a cool thing. Well, in level 2, there is a very good integration between groups, and this is where the CDE issue comes in. It means that all groups work in a common space and on a single model, which is a very good maturity from BIM. Well, similarly, in our country and in many countries of the world, work is being done at this level. Well, it means that there is a common space where all the groups working in a project work on the same project and in a common space, as I told you before. All right, let's get to level 3, which is a new level, and it's a bit too much to explain it, but that is the contractor, the employer, the consultant, the designer, and all of these are 100% integrated. Well, this is why here I brought this slide, because when you want to enter from level 2 to level 3, you need a lot of information. Hence, we have to learn the tools, and this expansion and this update is happening at a very fast pace. Hence, one of the people who is obliged to update their team is coordinator. Alright, let's get to this slide. Let's talk about educator. BIM coordinator role as an educator is a very responsible function, which consists of a list of responsibilities. Some of them are as follows. Uh, if I want to not talk about tender documents, I should say contract instead. For example, assume that there's a company that wants to give you a job to your company and it sends its contract or tender documents, and the person who usually analyzes this service description comments and organizes meetings is BIM coordinator as well. Hence, the first person who enters the projects in order to make the service description clear and then check it and discuss it is the BIM coordinator. And many times, manager helps it as well. Alright, suppose this contract was closed, you want the tender, the description of the service in that contract, what the employer's demands are should be explained to the team members. While supporting the tender team and clarification of the ordering parties BIM requirements, tender phase, explaining how BIM will be implemented in the project team, preliminary phase, actually coordinator evaluates the knowledge level of their team, and coordination of training courses for the project group is like verification of the project team's competency level. It checks to see if people are suitable for this job or not. Well, and providing employees with further training courses, actually, as you can see, if it is necessary. Actually, it's not about how to work with Navisworks or Revit and etc. It is about how to implement BIM in the projects.
Well, actually, how to read BEP, or how to understand the service description and how to understand the standards. Well, one of the topics that many people often ask me is that what is the difference between a BIM modeler and a Revit modeler? It's a very good question that you should pay attention to. Well, a Revit modeler is someone who only masters a software, which means they can only work with Revit. But a BIM modeler has the ability to implement the standards. It has the ability to read BEP and BIPs as well. And they can implement them in their own model. For example, for a Revit modeler, you should tell them that what they are gonna do. For example, you should tell them, do this or do not do that. But a BIM modeler, they can stand on their own feet and they know how to read or follow the standards. So one of their most important duties as a coach was to explain the service description in the contract to their personnel. All right, let's get to another topic about educator. It should provide an environment for knowledge exchange in the company. For example, we had a guy in our company who always liked to offer new solutions. For example, as a project manager, I used to provide solutions, but that guy, he thought to present a new method. Well, let me tell you something, my friend. One of the most weakness of BIM coordinator is that we rely on only one solution. All right, it's not like this at all. People who work, even if their experience is less than yours, they may come up with some solutions that you haven't. So creating that space for knowledge exchange is one of the most important tasks for BIM coordinator. So one of the most important tasks for BIM coordinator is to keep the atmosphere friendly and open and there should be flexibility in exchanging opinions. All right, another task is creating additional webinars using tools employed in the company. It is possible that the company is small, so this happens in the company itself and maybe even in 5 offices. With this, they can gather all the people there and use everyone's experience. Alright, the next task is sharing templates and specific documents created by team members. For example, I became a modeler of a company, and it has a coordinator as well. And I, from the previous project, has some templates and maybe specific documents which can be useful and functional for the project, and BIM Coordinator is responsible for getting them and then check them all. Hence, if they feel that it can be useful, share them with others so that they can also use them. Well, planning experience sharing sessions, which means planning meetings to exchange experiences that you do not need to do trial and error. It is possible that someone has reached this conclusion before you, and you can use their experiences. So, who should do this integration, and who should transfer this data between team members? And who should gather all the members? Well, coordinator is responsible for all of them as an educator. Alright, the last item is personal support for designers in working with models. Designers here are architects of the projects, and BIM Coordinator is like a bridge between all the groups. Well, planning, analyzing requirements, and developing a strategy for applying BIM is the key responsibility of BIM Coordinator. We say that a standard is developed, which means it is designed and prepared, which it is often the responsibility of the manager. Now this thing that has been compiled must be implemented in the project. Well, this implementing is called deploy. Well, deploy means for example, I got a document, but I didn't prepare it, and I have to implement it myself. Let me give you an example. We have a government, and the law is approved by the parliament. Actually, we can say parliament develops the law, and the government, the president, deploys the law. And people obey the law. That here it is BIM Modeler. Hence, BIM Modeler follows the strategies. Hence, you should first develop, then deploy, and at the end, follow. Alright, this slide says the tasks related to it mainly concern the tender phase or the initial design phase, where the implementation plan of BIM has not been established yet. By knowing the requirements of the tender, the BIM Coordinator describes in detail how to respond to the client's needs and requests. One of these documents in the BIM Execution Plan, BEP. Alright, that's it for this slide. Let's get to another one. Let me show it to you in the next slide. Here, yes, some of the responsibilities of a BIM coordinator who plays a crucial and effective planning role. Alright, planning an offer which satisfies the client's BIM ambition, aka EIR, with a tender team. Well, what the employer wants from you, actually, the description of the requested service, we call it EIR. A project starts with the submission of an EIR from the client side. Well, modeler is not responsible for getting and check the EIR. Well, as I told you before, BIM Coordinator takes the EIR and then checks them, and after that it will comment on them as well. Now, after we have set the EIR as a BIM coordinator, we need to transfer all of them to the team. Well, in the educator section, I said that coordinator should train and educate their team. And in planner section, coordinator should plan and choose some people that they want to work with, and they should decide the place that they want to work in. As you can see, the next item is, which is so important, you should pay attention to it a lot, creating internal BIM standards used in the office or organization. Well, in fact, I've been doing this item a lot in my projects. For example, it is very important to plan the sizes, how to measure the size of the fonts or how to name the walls, and etc. That helps a lot to be a healthy and integrated model. Well, the projects you deliver should not be different from each other. You can deliver different projects only if you have an internally developed standard that everyone in your company should follow it. Well, the modeler cannot handle this task since they have no ability, and neither is the job of a manager, because a manager doesn't master the model and software. So that's it for this item, standards for the use of modeling tools. All right, let's get to the next one, which is standards for creating object libraries. Well, for example, in this context, I must say that if you put a door, all the doors must be the same. Or if you put a wall, all the walls must be the same as well. Well, everyone shouldn't act according to their own taste. Everyone should work equally and seamlessly. Therefore, everyone shouldn't act according to their own taste. Everyone should work equally and seamlessly. And for this, we need a very strong bank of objects and families whose regulation, standardization, and sorting are all the responsibility of BIM coordinator. Alright, the last item is Office Data Exchange Standards. For example, if I want to correspond with facility group, the letter I send to it should not be different from the letter sent by someone else. All letters should be the same. For example, we are 5 modelers who want to correspond with this group, but for this we need to use a standard type, only of one standard type. Well, as you can see in this picture, we have many standards here, 1192 and 19650, which both of them are the important standards. Well, we even have 8541 standard, but if you want to study the standards, start with 1192 and 19650. Well, we were reviewing a contract that had written in its service description according to the 19650 standard that there was no need to say more details, and that was enough. Hence, to deliver your project, you need to know what kind of standard it follows. Alright, that's it for this part. Now let's get to the next slide. Here, the development of BEP, BIM Execution Plan, and BIP, BIM Implementation Plan. As you can see, it says it is often performed by the manager in many instances, and sometimes BIM coordinator does it as well. Okay, and we have here planning procedures. For example, we see that the structure doesn't match the architecture and they are not compatible. Who should coordinate this meeting and gather people? Of course, a BIM coordinator is responsible for this job. Well, let me tell you something, my friends. Meetings with people from different disciplines are called coordination. In fact, it is a meeting where coordination takes place. And these meetings will be so useful and will have a very good result. Well, that's it for some tasks for BIM coordinator, which modeler has no role in them. Alright, we are supposed to talk about innovator. Well, the mastermind of BIM team is BIM Coordinator. Alright, we have a slide here, let's read it together. It says, although the construction industry remains one of the least innovative technologies, the field of building information modeling, BIM, is an exception to the rule. Okay, it has grown rapidly in the field of BIM, and BIM Coordinator is the one who should go research to understand what new technologies and solutions have been created. And if it can keep itself up to date with today's effective technologies, we can have a better and effective workflow and coordination in the project, and its management will be easier as well. Alright, we have to see how this mastermind acts in this matter. Alright, it says the coordinator's BIM tasks as a technology precursor in a company may include. Alright, let me tell you something before I continue. For example, in a company, they have been doing something in the same way for years, and they didn't make any changes in their methods at all. For example, I used to work in a company, and I had just joined that company, and I told the person who was doing the work, who was responsible, yes, I told that person, your method is old, not new. But that person also told me that no, you don't know at all. We know the work better. So if it is like this, if it would be like this forever, it is always the same method, and there is never a new method to do what needs to be done. Hence, the BIM coordinator, as a creative person, updates the drawing or modeling of the project. And they can update this method by some softwares such as Dynamo or Grasshopper, that both of them are the same kind of. And Dynamo, Grasshopper, both of them are the node-based softwares. And as you can see in these pictures, we have some wires, nodes, and etc. And obviously it makes the work, the process, faster. Alright, in our projects, when we calculate it, and in the worst possible case, we have 30% time savings, in other words, a cost savings. Or even saving on computers, space, employees. The faster you deliver the projects, the more new projects you will get. The next item is the utilization of specialized plugins. For example, we have a topic that we don't have it in Dynamo, then we can write its code. You know what, my friends, the programming language for those who do architecture is Python. Although C# is more powerful than Python, but it's not user-friendly. So be sure to use Python because it is more user-friendly, and use plugins because they are very useful and important, and you can save more time by using them. And if you are a BIM coordinator, it is your duty. So, a technology precursor, a mastermind, is participating in conferences and industry events for educational purposes and being familiar with the latest developments in the industry. The next item is testing new solutions, methodologies, concepts on pilot projects. For example, a new method comes to my mind, but I don't share it with my team. Well, I will test it in the project, fix the bugs, and when I get the full version of it, I'll share it with my team then. Well, we have 3 subcategories for this title, testing new solutions, and one of them is 3D design. As you can see, it says drawing less designing. Well, the design should be done directly in the 3D space, and it is the BIM coordinator duty to share it with the team after it solves the bugs. Alright, the next subcategory is applying the VDC. I don't want to explain about it, but I brought you its meaning here, which is like this. VDC defines a mechanism where, before commencing work, each stage of the project is collectively simulated by the design and construction team. Well, let me tell you this. VDC stands for Virtual Document Construction. Everything will be simulated. Alright, this picture, as you can see, is our last subcategory, which is usage of huddle walls for project needs. Well, this is a term. As you can see, it's like a picture on this wall and everyone is looking at it, and it helps people who come up with new solutions. They can help us in it. You lead this team as a mastermind. Well, maybe you are already familiar with AR and VR. It is possible that you have worked very hard to implement a project in your vision, and you just make a model and cut a section from it and produce a plan from it. But I should say, no, this is not the right way. Well, to use in newer technologies, I think most of us have heard the name of VR and AR, but we didn't follow it. We didn't go to research about it, and it's very good that you should definitely use this VR in your projects, just like we use it after we have our own model. We are finishing our own project, and this will make your client happy. And as you may know, AR stands for augmented reality and VR stands for virtual reality. Well, on the right side of the image, as you can see, you can move in your project by wearing glasses, actually by VR glasses. But on the left side of the image, you can check the place that you want by holding a tablet, which is called AR. And as you can see in AR, you can see behind the suspended ceilings, the equipment, the pipes, and other components of the project that you cannot see with a normal vision. Well, for example, one of the pipes in our building was leaking, and we didn't know where the leak was located in the building. If we had an AR device, we could easily find the location of the leak. Well, it is just like X-ray for the human body, that when they want to find the fracture in the body, they can easily find it with the X-ray machine. Well, the last item is creating an EXE format of the project. It says interacting with the project similar to computer games. Well, preparing VR and especially AR is not an easy task. That's why you need to have an account for AR, for example. And this is not an easy job. For example, you've done modeling in Revit, and after that you put it in Inkscape, and then you get an output in EXE format from it, so that you don't face any problem to run it. EXE, it means execution file. Suppose you want to show your client how the project was done and how it was designed after modeling and doing your work. You just need to deliver the desired file in EXE format to your client, and then they just need to double click on that file to run it on their system. Hence, it can move through the project that you modeled before, just like a video game, and it's very cool and beautiful. So all these tasks are the responsibility of the coordinator, and manager is involved in contract work, and modeler has to do their own job. So it is the job of the coordinator, which is so crucial, which is so vital and important for the company, for the team. As I told you before, the responsibility of the coordinator is extremely vital and important that you can ignore it. So you must pay attention to the job that coordinator is responsible for. That's it for this video. I hope you got it very well and you got all the points and the explanation that I told you. All right, we are here in the last part, coordinator as a coordinator, just like its name. Of all four, this role is the most significant, and the name of the position itself comes from this role. One of the most important tasks about BIM Coordinator is that our model is completely clashless. Well, clash detection is one of the most important events and benefits of BIM, and if you talk to others, you will realize that one of the best benefits of BIM is that project clashes will be identified, and the project will be fully implemented, and the plans will be without any flaw. And as you can see in this slide, it says coordination duties may include many tasks, which often depend on the type of the project you're working on. And the most common are model geometry checks, collision searches, clash detections, and reporting to the relevant team members. All right, here we have BIM Coordinator also tasks responsibility for. Well, I want to talk more about the clash, then I will talk about the others. Assume that I, as a BIM coordinator, detected the clashes of the project, so this should be referred to the people who are responsible. For example, if a channel collides with a column, we should either move the column or change its size. And for example, modeler has found something and it is a BIM coordinator's job to send it. Well, for example, we've had 400 clashes in our project so far, but before you send them, you have to categorize them and then name them, so that when the person who wants to read them, this 100-page report, can easily recognize them. For example, this clash belongs to zone A, or we could have unsolvable clashes or large clashes, or even the clashes that can be solved by review. Okay, we have here reviewing clash reports and scheduling meetings with responsible parties for decision making. When he sends the clash detection report to the relevant officials and coordination meetings are held, a series of terms will be performed on the model. For example, a structure will be modified, a facility will be modified, and then it should be rechecked and the report updated. Naturally, he should give a report to the project manager as well. Well, creating a 4D model, integrating time or schedule information into the 3D BIM model. Well, my friends, you can see the BIM course that I explained completely to you about 4D and other cases. But now we just focus on BIM Coordinator. That creating a 4D model is one of its tasks. Okay, that's it for this slide. Let's get to the another one here. Let me show it to you. All right, verifying if the information entered in the model is correct. If you saw the BIM course, in one slide I did show you that BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, which I wrote a capital I, a big one on the screen. to show you information is so important, which means that the data that you enter into the project is very important, and it is the responsibility of the BIM coordinator to check the information that the modeler gave to the objects. Well, one of the most important topics that I had in my work experience was exporting. Well, let me tell you this, my friends, it's not possible to work with a company that doesn't ask you for an output with a CAD format. No matter what you do, you need an output in a CAD format. So you have to get an export, one of which is in CAD format and the other is in PDF format. An IFC is a common format as well. Well, for Tekla and Revit, its interface format is IFC. We have two types of format, closed beam and open beam. Well, we call the original and native format, such as Revit, closed beam, or even CAD. For example, when you have a closed beam and you are working on something like Revit, you need to open the file only by that software. Well, IFC is open beam, which means if you give it to everyone, they can open it by any software. So the company says to everyone to get an output in the IFC format so that anyone can open it with their own softwares. And it is the BIM coordinator's duty to make sure that modeler got the right output or left some data or not. Well, I told you before, a BEP will be written first in the project, and it is a BIM coordinator's duty to check whether the modelers follow this BEP or not. And if our model complies with this BEP, all right, let's get to template setup. A project that wants to start, it should start with a template, and it has obviously an initial configuration that coordinator should set it. Well, we need to see what type of templates we should use. For example, we have 3 templates in our company which are used depending on the type of the project. Alright, the last item here is establishing and verifying the base point and shared coordinates among all disciplines. Let me tell you this, that this item is so important. You should pay attention to it a lot, since if you ignore it, you will be punished in your process, in your work. For example, the construction group took a base point in one place, and the facility group took a base point in another one. And here, this is the BIM coordinator's duty to connect all the groups with each other, and then set the base point in a certain place for all the groups. And in my opinion, it is very important and vital in all projects that BIM coordinator must do it well. Hence, establishing and verifying the base point and shared coordinates is one of the most important tasks for BIM coordinator. All right, here we have these 3 items. Creating the required project families, usually complex ones. Well, some people say that BIM coordinator doesn't need to master the work themselves, but in my opinion, they need to master the work themselves. Well, we have some families that no one can create them, but BIM coordinator is able to create them, since they are sometimes more complicated than we think, and coordinator is able to do that. All right, the next item is participating in the inaugural meetings to ensure that everyone understands the workflow and BEP. So BIM coordinator should gather all the people and inform everyone, and then gives them some important points and explain to everyone, for example, the base point or the work process according to the BEP which used in the project. All right, the last item is participating in meetings with clients, contractors, etc. as a BIM expert in the organization. Well, it's a common job for a BIM coordinator. For example, the client calls and says to send me your office resume, and the secretary does the same. And if the client wants to talk to someone about the work process and the office resume, in this case, the only person who can talk about the project is BIM coordinator, since they can explain to client what's the process like. So no one can do that, neither the manager nor the modeler can handle this. Well, here, right, establishing an agenda for regular coordination meetings. For example, if a review coordination meeting is going to be held, we may not know why we are in the meeting and what the situation is. Hence, it is the BIM coordinator duty to explain to the team members the work process and the topic of the meeting. All right, the next item is transferring models to new software versions. Well, it is a BIM coordinator's responsibility to tell all team members to use the new version of, for example, Revit. And a modeler, for example, cannot use a new version at their own decision. So when this model is being updated and doesn't lose anything, this is the responsibility of a BIM coordinator. As you can see, it says previously agreed with the whole project group. Well, let me tell you this, a BIM coordinator must have a very good relationship with all the team members and maintain that friendship and intimacy. And a BIM coordinator must not consider themselves the boss of anyone else, otherwise the project will fail. All right, so as you can see, it is the summary here. Okay, all the mentioned cases can be related to the other factors, fewer or more, which are referred. The first item is how big is our company and does it employ BIM technology on a daily basis? Well, there are many companies that have a project with BIM and another one with CAD. Well, you cannot set the mechanism here. For example, set a manager, a BIM coordinator, a modeler. Since there is no project with BIM anymore, all the projects are with CAD because the structure of that project will be destroyed. All right, the next question here is, what is the advancement level of BIM in the company? As you can see in this picture, for example, if someone is working at level 1, there is not a common space anymore, so many of the BIM coordinator's roles will disappear. Well, many projects are only being modeled for architecture and structure without any facilities. Hence, there is practically no clash detection. The next question is, are there already well-defined BIM implementation strategies for projects? Well, there will be some questions for it. Do we have a BEP or should we write it? Have the team members worked with BEP before? If they have worked for it, they should know about it then. Well, what level of knowledge does the project team have regarding building information modeling? Actually, it will be difficult if the team members do not have information about the project. it would be difficult for the BIM coordinator. For example, the dependence of the team members on me in the project is much less than before. And we have here this question: does the contracting authority require the implementation of BIM? Well, if it doesn't require, something happens that I told you before. The last topic you should pay attention to the lot. Does the country where you work have a specific top-down rules for using BIM? Well, as you may know, in our country, a series of laws, a series of rules are designed and regulated for the implementation of BIM. Of course, a series of documents have also been provided. For example, if you have or don't have a series of requirements from someone who is higher than you, the situation will be very different. Well, regarding the internal standards, as you can remember, if you have a series of rules from top to bottom, you must follow a series of standards. It's not under your control. Okay, in this slide, the explanations that I gave to you, here we have it in a graphic form. BIM coordinator as educator, planner, innovator and coordinator. You can search this picture in BIM Corner website. I hope this explanation and this video will be useful for you, and you will be able to upgrade your position from modeler to a coordinator. I wish you a good luck and goodbye.